welcome back to the IMNerd podcast, guys. I'm your host, Freeway. I'm here with my co-host, Kenny. And today we are here to talk about the movie Dune, which is a really, really good movie. It has a lot of tropes that reminded me of Star Wars, and come to find out, this movie actually, or I should say this series, the original novel, inspired Star Wars. So this predates Star Wars, actually. It came out 44 years before Star Wars was ever written in the 70s. This movie came out in like the 40s, or I should say, the book came out in the 40s, and it has that whole the chosen one thing going on, the prince that was promised, the savior of them all, the one. It does a lot of that, but I think it's actually really good, this remake. And so we just wanted to talk about it because it was one of the bigger movies that came out in 2021. Also, it did really well in the box office, but it also did well at the Oscars. Like, it was nominated for 10 Oscars, and it actually won 6 out of 10 of them, which is pretty insane. And I'll actually pull up a list of Dune's Oscar wins, because I was actually impressed by the fact that I didn't expect it to win 6 out of 10. Like, when I saw it nominated for things like Best Picture, I knew it wasn't going to win something like that. But even still, like, to win 6 out of 10 Oscars is nothing to scoff at. So,
you know what's kind of funny is we briefly talked about this earlier. But we were saying how things that win Best Picture are always like really pretentious movies.
yeah, they tend to be.
And like, granted, there's some really good movies that won Best Picture, but there's a lot of times like these really pretentious movies that win it. But anyway, my point is, Dune, I guess as a novel, however many years ago it was in the 70s, I wouldn't say it's pretentious, but it was definitely different. Like, it's as much as Lord of the Rings is usually credited as sort of the godfather and the creator of fantasy, like, Dune is probably the most influential science fiction novel in terms of like the science fiction legacy.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Dune, I didn't know, like, again, I didn't even know what Dune was. I didn't know that it was such a big deal, as far as just how much it influenced the future and the whole science fiction fantasy world that we have come to love. Like, I like Star Wars. Like, I genuinely do like Star Wars. I think the storyline, at least for the main series, can be a little convoluted and stuff like that, because I don't read any of like the side comics and all of the gap fillers. But for the most part, like, you can kind of get the storyline from just watching the 9 movies and the other side movies they did, like Rogue One, which is probably one of the better ones, and Hans and stuff like that. But yeah, you see it all over this movie. Like, you can see a lot of the things that I felt like, I was like, oh shit, is this like a rip of Star Wars? And like I said earlier, it's actually the other way around. So it's just kind of cool how this sets the stage for a lot of things that come after it. It's one of those cult classic type of movies. And the original movie, I think, is terrible, but maybe it's because it's so old that a lot of the technology doesn't look good now. Like, there's CG and the character casting, it's just all over the place. It's also whoever directed that movie, whoever did the adaptation for the first one, that's way back, like, it's super old now. They took a lot of liberties, I think, that I'm just not a fan of. It seems almost cartoonish the way some of the characters behave in the original. So I don't think you didn't see the original movie, right?
No, I haven't sat down and watched the whole original movie. I did, read in quotations. A long time ago, I tried listening to the audiobook for Dune.
Yeah.
And only reason why I didn't finish it, I mean, just shit happens. But I remember I found an audiobook online for it, and it was 10 hours. I was like, all right, cool. I was like, I'll just listen to this as time goes on. So I've listened to a decent portion of the audiobook, but then I got like pretty much all the way through that 10 hours. But then I realized that was just like part 1 of the audiobook.
Yes.
And it was actually it's 30 hours. And I just kind of never got around to listening to part 2 and 3. So what's kind of interesting is that it's been a really long time since I listened to that. So but watching this movie, my point is, there was parts where I was like, oh yeah, like, there's a lot of it I didn't remember, but there was like little parts where I was like, oh yeah, I do kind of remember that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this movie, as opposed to the original. So I guess to give some overview,
when did you watch the original?
I watched the original the day I watched Dune on HBO Max. So Dune came out in theaters, and then it also came out on HBO Max. I wasn't able to see it in theaters. I forget what was going on around that time, but for whatever reason, I wasn't able to make it to the movies to see it. I usually see everything because I have the AMC A-list thing. But I wasn't able to see it in theater, so I decided one day at like 2 a.m. I was up, I couldn't sleep. It was the weekend, and I just decided to put it on. I said, "Fuck it." My friend that I always go to the movies with told me that the movie was amazing and that I should really watch it. I looked on Rotten Tomatoes and saw it got like an 86%. I was like, okay, you know what? It won't be a waste of my time. Most likely, I most likely will like it. He told me that it's something I would definitely like. I started it, and when I tell you that I was hooked the second I started playing it at 2 a.m., I watched the full thing. And then after that, so I think I watched it like Sunday morning at 2 a.m., right? And so I had the whole Sunday. And he was talking about how like, oh, in the original movie, this and that, and then the books, this and that. And so it kind of made me start to want to know more. And I said, you know what,
Yeah.
let me watch the original just to see. And he was like, you know, it's a little out there. It's a little bit more theatrical in a sense, the original one. So I just put it on and I watched it and I was like, all right, if I had seen this first, I probably would not be really interested in watching the remake, if I'm being honest. But luckily I saw it the other way around. The remake just kills the
Yeah.
original for me. From what I understand, the original is not regarded as a good movie. A lot of people who like the Dune lore and story do not like that original movie at all. So
Yeah, once again, I haven't seen the movie that came out, but I know that it's not well regarded in terms of like being a great movie.
yeah,
I think some people like it just as like fun, but
yeah. I mean, you'll always get that, but yeah, it's not the best. Oh, real quick though. So Dune 2021, I did say that it won like 6 Oscars, so I'll just say what they are. So it won for cinematography, for editing, score, visual effects, production design, and sound. So those are like some pretty good ones. And that all goes to say most of those were like atmospheric things when you think about it. Like the sound, the production design, the score, the editing, like cinematography, visual effects. A lot of those things just go into building this world because this is its own universe. It doesn't take place in our universe at all. It has this entire completely separate from our world type of thing going on. So I really like that. Just like Star Wars, if there's an Earth, it's long gone. It's not even mentioned. They live on their own specific planets. And I guess we should start off with just a little backstory of like what is happening because it is kind of confusing at first. When I first watched it, I don't know why I was so interested in it, but I was able to follow the movie immediately pretty well, even though I'm always intimidated by learning all the new characters' names, learning like families' names, and then learning, just all these different things. That's what Game of Thrones is kind of hard for people who've never watched Game of Thrones. When they first start watching it, there's so many characters, right? And you have to learn all of them. And then the more you watch Game of Thrones, the more it can become second nature to you. So I've
yeah.
only actually seen Dune twice. Today being the second time I've ever watched it. I've only watched the movie one time in 2021 on HBO Max. I loved it so much. I watched the original, and then that was it. Like I never watched it again. But now I finally have a reason to. And so yeah, the main character's name is Paul. He's played by Timothy Chalamet, who is like one of the new poster boys in Hollywood. He's definitely one of the actors that's been getting a lot of good roles. I feel like they're setting him up to be like another Tom Holland, another one of those Leonardo DiCaprio when he was younger type of guys. He has that vibe to him. He's in a lot of movies now. You see him all over the place. He's in a lot of magazines, a lot of magazine covers. He's also very pretty. So he's the main character. He plays Paul. And he is from House Atreides. So House Atreides, you can just think of them as the good guys. House Atreides are the good guys. His dad is like this super honorable man named Leto. And then you have the evil guys, the Harkonnens, and they're like some fucking subhuman. They look like humans, but they've all been, I don't want to say modified, but they are definitely, something's up with them. They're just like fucking creatures almost. Like they're humans, but they barely act like humans. They're just disgusting, and their skin is super pale, almost like it's been drained of all of its blood, which I think they do actually show a scene with them hanging upside down and blood being drained out of their bodies. But they look gross. They look evil. They come from a planet where it's always raining. And then you have the Emperor, and the Emperor. They don't even show the Emperor in this actual movie, which is interesting.
The Emperor's not in the movie. Also, interestingly, it's not like directly. I mean, I guess it is directly said, but I feel like it's something that is kind of missable. And I feel that way about a lot of things in this movie. Is that there is some really interesting tidbits that I think are kind of missable, but like they're related. Like the two, like House Atreides and House Harkonnen are, as far as I understand, like they are directly related.
Yeah,
Now, I think it's been a couple hundred years since maybe their ancestry split, but
yeah.
he refers there's a part in the movie where they refer to each other as cousins.
Yeah, the Baron definitely says that to his dad before he kills him. He's like, something, something cousin. And I thought that was interesting. So yeah, they are related, and it actually goes further than that with the whole Bene Gesserit. So the Bene Gesserit this is where I think the movie got me. I fucking love this completely made up power, this completely made up faction of people. The Bene Gesserit, it's like a faction of women who have this
Yo, you
power.
want to talk about Star Wars stealing shit? They stole Jedi mind tricks
Yes,
straight the fuck
the
up.
Bene Gesserit has this thing called the voice. And when they do it in this movie, it is so fucking cool because the sound editing for it, it's like your voice gets all super amped and echoey, and you command a person to do whatever you want them to do. It is such a cool ability. It's some anime level shit. I love it. Like, honestly, I was like, yo, that's one of the powers. Like, I remember saying when I first watched Code Geass that I would love to have Lelouch's Geass powers, where he like uses
Yeah,
the eyes and he can command you to do anything. The Bene Gesserit has the voice, and it's pretty much the same thing, but apparently it's not easy to use. You can fuck it up, and then it does nothing, or the person can resist it if they're strong enough with their own powers of the voice. So
yeah, like he probably wouldn't be able to do it to like the grandma,
no,
whoever that lady
the
is,
Reverend Mother, she's like the truth sayer, and
the All Mother.
the All Mother. Yeah, she is the Emperor's truth sayer, which is like his right hand religious priest kind of thing. But yeah, the Bene Gesserit are broken as hell. A faction of women, they all wear these, look like funeral attire. They have veils on, black veils. They're dressed in all black always. His mom actually is of the Bene Gesserit. Apparently, she's actually created by them the same way Paul was created by them. His mother, Jess, was instructed to have only daughters for Leto, but apparently she decided to do her own thing and try to bring in the one herself by having a boy on purpose. So I know this is like a lot. If you haven't seen the movie, or even if you have seen the movie, just bear with us because there's a lot of lore here, and I do want to go over it. But the Bene Gesserit apparently can manipulate like the sex of their children. They can also pass down memories and abilities to children on purpose. So when the Reverend Mother visits Paul's mom, Jess, and she's like angry with her. It's like, you were told to only have daughters, and you thought that you could bring the one into the world. Basically, like you had hubris. You were arrogant, thinking that you could be the one to fucking bring in the prince that was promised. And so you decided to have a boy and give him our powers, the voice. Like you trained him in the way. They call it the way.
Yeah,
And cue fucking Knuckles meme right there. But he was trained in something called the way, so he has the ability to use the voice, even though he's not very good at it. In fact, one of the opening scenes is him sitting at breakfast with his mother. He just woke up, and she's sitting kind of far away from him. And there's water, and he wants the, like, he looks over at it as she pours some for herself. She knows exactly what he's thinking, like he wants water. So she says, "Command me to give it to you. Use the voice." And he's like, "Mom, I just woke up. It's like 8 a.m." And she doesn't say anything. She just looks at him like, "I'm not passing you the water. Like, you have to use the voice on me." So he like closes his eyes and thinks for a long time, and then he fucking tries it, and it doesn't do anything. Like the first time he uses the voice, it just does not work at all. She kind of just takes it in. She's like, "Try again, like try harder." And when he tries the second time, that shit comes out with this really strong, echoey, loud voice. But she's able to completely like she kind of resists it. She's like, "Okay, like you know, you're better at it, but it still isn't enough."
yeah. She ends up being forced to move the water like a little bit, and
Yes,
then
she
he
grabs the
kind
water
of
and moves
stops.
it. Yeah, I thought that was really cool. So there's this amazing power that just seems anime as fuck to me. I love it. I would love the ability to, I don't know, look at any human being and be like, "Give me your car keys," and they just have to do it. Like they absolutely have to do it. It's like
That's
step
why
away
they
from the
don't let
vehicle.
men have it. All right, they know you're fucked up.
Yeah.
That's why they're like, we don't train men in this shit. Y'all are
Yeah,
fucking
they seemed
y'all cause
pretty.
wars.
They were pretty
Because
serious about not giving it to men. Go ahead.
in the scene, this is pretty early in the movie, not morning, but when he gets brought to see the older woman, I forget her
Yeah,
name.
yeah. We just call it a Reverend Mother.
I
Mother.
keep
That's what
I, I
she's.
keep calling her the All Mother in my
You
head.
can call her that too. That's fine. They don't know what we mean.
Um, but he's brought to her, and then like Jessica, Paul's mom is like kind of nervous and scared, and Paul's brought to her, and you can tell like the All Mother's kind of annoyed, and then so when he does, first of all, when she commands him, it's like he completely. I think it's interesting because I think it's the only time in the movie they show you, I guess, what the perspective of being commanded is.
Yes.
Because she says like, "Come here, kneel," and the
Yes.
screen kind of like goes black, and then he's in front of her, and then he kneels. And so it's like when you get commanded, I don't even really know how much consciousness you have of what you're doing because like he just appears over there.
So let me interject here. I actually watched, after seeing the original movie, I went through a whole phase, and I went on YouTube and I watched the director actually explaining how he directed a lot of the scenes, because the guy who directed this movie is phenomenal. Not exactly, I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but Jesus, he's really good at his job. And that scene was brought up in the YouTube interview that I watched, and he says he actually made it where when the Reverend Mother says, "Come here, kneel," and you see it go black, and then he just appears in front of her, and then you just see him kind of fall to his knees. It goes black because he wanted it to seem like you don't even remember being commanded to do what you did.
Yeah.
So what you're saying right now, Kenny, is 100% accurate. It's like when you are commanded by the voice, you don't even remember doing the thing that you were told to do. It's kind of like a dreamlike state. They actually show it go black, and he kind of wakes back up. It's really quick, but it's not done for no reason. Like when you're watching it, the screen kind of goes black real quick, and then it opens back up, and he's just in front of her.
Yeah, it does give you a feeling. Like it is a good director choice because it does give you, even without like watching an interview or like getting like
you knew what was
up. It gives
up.
you that feeling to like say like, oh, I wonder if like this is what happened.
Yeah, and so they did that for a reason where it looks like a person blinked their eyes. It actually looks like Paul took a blink, and when he woke back up, he's in front of the Reverend Mother. Then she says, "Kneel." He falls down. He says, "How dare you use the voice on me?
Yeah,
and how dare you command my mother to leave in her own house?"
Oh, dude. So there was a lot of interesting stuff. So first I wanted to just finish the one point in that you can tell that she really, obviously they don't want men, and they don't really tell you, like it's not necessarily explained why they don't want men to use the power. But it's like a female thing. They have whatever their mission is, and they give hints. This is something else that's kind of interesting, is that the movie or the book, I don't really know how it's done in the book, but so the movie, it lays these pieces for things, and you kind of just have to figure it out. I also think it's something that benefits going through more than once.
Yes.
I could tell the first time I watched the movie that I was like, oh, this is a series that you're supposed to experience more than once, because it's one of those things that will like recontextualize things that you've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it's pretty clear that she doesn't want men to use the power. And when the thing that she's saying to him, she was like, oh, he has eyes just like his father. Like he's just as prideful or whatever. Or just as stubborn, I think she says.
Yeah, stubborn.
And she does the whole thing. She talks about how an animal, basically after she does the test, and the test is like, she puts his hand through like this excruciating pain. And if he removes his hand, she kills him.
Yep.
Anyway, afterwards she says like, we needed to make sure you didn't have like the instincts of a beast or whatever. To me, it really felt like I was testing to see if you were gonna try to use your power or do something the way a man would. Like it seemed very much like I wanted to see if you could control your baser instincts, because men would take this power and fucking start wars over it.
And
you know what I mean?
Like animals they just act off of instinct, right? So an animal feels pain, it runs, right? It either runs or it attacks. And so those are the two things that he could have done right there. He could have pulled his hand out, which is run, or he could have attacked her and tried to use the voice on her. He tried to do something to her. So we had two options there that were both death. And I just know if he tried to do either of them, she was going to kill him so fucking quick. Which they actually show his mother outside of the room. She's standing directly outside, because he looks back almost like he wants help. It's like, I'm all alone here. My mom is, but she says, your mom is standing right outside that door. No one's going to bother us. No one's going to intrude. She knows exactly what I'm about to do right now. And so he is instructed to put his hand in the box, and he says, what's inside the box? And she just says, pain. That's one word, pain. Mm-hmm. And so he puts his hand in. He doesn't feel anything at first, and then she puts this thing up to his neck, this little needle. It's a poison needle that kills you instantly, apparently. And she's like, if you remove your hand from the box, I'll kill you. And we want to see if you're different from an animal. So I do like that whole setup there. Like, we want to see if you have any fucking self-control. And I was wondering if part of it may be mind over matter, because you start to see him resist it. At first, it's fucking him up bad. Like, my man is going through, he's sweating. You can see he's like gritting his teeth real hard. And he's staring, like he's kind of not even looking at her. He's kind of looking down, just trying to focus, and his head is shaking. And then at some point, the music score changes. And this is why the movie just has such an amazing sound editing. But the music starts to go to this triumphant thing, right? And he lifts his head up and he just kind of stares at her. And it's a very cocky, defiant, like, I won. This is not enough for me. Like, this is not going to be what makes me break.
It's pretty crazy too. The visuals they show a bunch of crazy visuals. And one of the visuals is like a hand that fucking looks mummified.
Yes.
And which, I assume is his hand, right? Like that's the pain he's feeling.
Yeah.
and because like when he takes it out, like he looks at his
He
hand,
does.
almost to be like, "Yo, is my hand still there?" Like,
Yeah, he looks at his hand, and when they do show that one vision, the hand is basically scorched. It looks like it had just been in a fire. Like
yeah, it
it looks
looks
like a
fucked
burn
up.
victim. It looks really bad. But yeah, he that entire scene is one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie, just because it looks really cool. I love every scene that they use the voice, and they use it a lot throughout the series, which is great. Like throughout this movie, and this is going to be a trilogy, so we have a lot more to look forward
Oh, is it
to.
confirmed it's gonna be 3
Yeah, it's
movies?
gonna be 3 movies. So there's that. I'm glad. I like this world building. The first movie is definitely a setup. Like this, a lot of this movie is just set up for the overarching storyline. We definitely dropped in the middle of something, the same way I love Game of Thrones, and you're dropped in the middle of it. Like Game of Thrones episode 1, you're in the middle of the story. You're not at the beginning of something. You're at the middle. It's the same feeling when you're watching Dune. Like House Atreides have been at war with the Harkonnens for centuries, apparently, and now they're just being commanded. The Harkonnens were commanded to leave Arrakis, which is the planet that everybody wants, and the House Atreides
Dune.
has been commanded to go there. Did you want to say something right there, Kenny?
Oh, no, I just said, like, Arrakis, I just said, like, it's Dune. Like,
Yes.
that's
Yeah. So all right. So we got the House Atreides, the good guys. You got the Harkonnens, the bad guys. You got the Bene Gesserit, which are like these sideline priests that they actually are part. They're like near every family, every major house in the universe. There's Bene Gesserit that kind of serve them, but in reality, the Bene Gesserit actually serve themselves.
they do, and dude, they put some very interesting things in there because they make it clear that they've been around for a very long time. There's a part, it's like the scene after what we were just talking about where Paul has his hand in like the thing and he's experiencing pain. And then when she's leaving, when the All Mother's leaving and Paul's mother, Jessica, goes to like talk to her and she's like, "Did you have to do all that?" And she was like, "I had to make sure he could control himself or whatever." But she, I'm trying to remember, she says that like, your sisters have like laid a path for you. Like she says, like on Arrakis, like we've done all that we can.
Yeah.
Like the sisters have like laid a path for you. And then there's like some other things. She talks to her son afterwards, and she like not fully explains, but kind of explains what the Bene Gesserit do.
Yes.
And when you get fast forward a bit, you get to a part where Jessica is talking to this girl who's I think trying to be a chambermaid or whatever. She talks about like the prophecy and all these other things, and it's so weird and interesting. I can't remember exactly, but it seems as though the Bene Gesserit have been around for a really long time. They're said to be spread all throughout the universe on all these important houses, and they like lay the path, so to speak, for future Bene Gesserit people to like be accepted and welcomed. You know what
Yeah,
I
so
mean?
I can actually fill in some of the gaps there. So basically, the Bene Gesserit, like I said, this is a religious cult, and they're all women. They're near every major house. They serve as just kind of like they can kind of see the future, and they can also manipulate people. And people don't even realize that they have all of these crazy powers. Like a lot of times, if you're manipulated by them, the same way Paul was commanded with the voice, he only knows about it because his mom taught him. But regular people have no idea what the fuck is happening. Like you can
Mhm.
tell that later on in the movie when they use the voice on some of their captures, that they don't even know that they should not have them free to speak. Like they have Paul's mom, I think, gagged, but they don't have him gagged. It's because they're like, well,
Yeah.
women, they know that like women can use the voice, but they don't realize they don't even know that like a man can do that or that Paul can do that. They just don't have him gagged and bound the same way as his mom. And so it's like this thing where throughout history, they have been manipulating timelines and just doing all types of things to different houses, literally aiding in the rise and fall of houses. Like whatever their will is, they believe in this thing called the golden timeline. And the way they show it is like this gigantic long worm, and at the head of the worm is like you see kind of like the sun is on it. You know how in Christianity they have those pictures of Jesus and like all of the saints and disciples and stuff, and they have that circle around their heads. Like whenever you
Yeah,
go,
yeah, yeah. I
whenever
noticed that on
yeah,
Arrakis in the I'm gonna just say the palace.
yeah,
There was a
drawing of it.
like hieroglyph. Yeah, it was a giant worm with a sun.
And that's
I didn't realize
that's
that was
representative. Yeah.
representative of the Bene Gesserit. I assumed that was more so representative of the like Arrakis's like beliefs, and because like Arrakis and the religion of Arrakis is so seeped in the worm.
Yeah, but actually, in actuality, it represents the golden timeline, and also, like a lot of people believe in this great savior, and it's akin to like the Great Worm. So there's a lot of intermixing of all these different storylines coming together here. Like the people of Arrakis, they're known as the Fremen, and they're basically just a desert people. They live underground because the planet is so fucking hot that in the daytime you basically can't survive without something called a still suit. And a still suit is basically something that you wear that recycles all of your liquids and turns them back into drinking water so that you actually don't lose liquids. It takes a very long time for you to run out of liquids in a desert wearing a still suit. If done properly, they say. So like when you sweat, if you cry, all of those liquids get recycled by the suit's technology, and it has a little spout in the front where your mouth would be, and you can drink the water again. It's not exactly when they first said that, I was like, oh God, I don't know if I guess I'm just so Americanized and just so used to living like a life where I just have clean drinking water that the idea of recycling my water and re-drinking it so that I don't die in the desert, that shit just sounded so disgusting to me, but it's what they have to do. So yes,
you gotta do, baby.
we haven't talked about the actual real point of this movie though, and I want to get to that. So there's this resource called spice, and spice is only found on Arrakis. Arrakis is the planet that it's called Dune, right? So the whole movie is called Dune, the whole series is called Dune. It's based around this planet called Arrakis that has this resource called spice. Spice is a narcotic. It makes people have hallucinations, and it also extends your life. So to the people of Arrakis, the inhabitants, the people who are just indigenous to Arrakis, it's a sacred thing, this spice. And outsiders, foreigners who come there to mine it and to harvest it, they just want to use it because it allows their fucking space pilots to navigate interstellar travel. So that's like the whole thing is without spice, the people who are flying the ships to go from planet to planet, star to star, literally can't do it without being, I'll say for lack of a better word, high off of this spice. And what this spice does, if you're exposed to it long enough, it turns your eyes blue. So you see Zendaya's character, her name is Chani. You see her throughout the movie, although she doesn't actually appear until the very end, but you see her throughout the movie. She has these really, really deep blue eyes. And I don't mean blue as in just like how, like some people just have actual blue eyes. Their entire eyeball is covered in the color blue. So it looks very, if you saw somebody like this in real life, it would actually freak you out a bit because there's no human that looks like that. So it's a very exaggerated look. But their eyes are very blue because of exposure to the spice. And Paul is spice sensitive. So the main character, they pretty much portrayed that he is the one, right? Like he wasn't supposed to be born. He was supposed to be a girl, but his mom chose to defy the Bene Gesserit's will. She created a boy, gave him the powers, the way, told him the voice. And he has all these visions. The movie opens with him having visions of the future. He constantly has visions. And the Reverend Mother, when he has that scene where he's tested by her, is told, before it's being told to put your hand in the box, she asks him, "You've been having dreams, my boy." And he's like, "Yeah." She's like, "Do your dreams always come true exactly as you see them?" And he says, "No," which is a good thing, right? Because that means that there's not just one outcome to everything. Like he dreams multiple things, and they don't always come true. So they confirmed that early on.
It's interesting because it seems as though he gets visions from the future, and then obviously he like remembers it, and then. Like you said, it's good that it's not guaranteed to happen exactly the way it is. And to be fair, if you have visions from the future and then there's nothing you can do about it, then it's like, what's the point?
What is the point? Just you don't have free will at that point. Like everything you do is going to lead to that.
Yeah. So he can, whether willingly or unwillingly, he ends up manipulating the future a few times. Like,
yes.
For example, just as a quick example, he tells Duncan that. Like he's going to die. Like he saw him dead.
Yep.
He finds the Fremen and he dies. And what's interesting is that that doesn't happen. And he's like, I need to go with you. But it's possible that just this simple act of him having that vision and then telling Duncan that he was going to die changed it. Because now, even though at the time when it happened, Duncan kind of like wrote it off and he was like, whatever. Like I'm not going to die. But that could have stuck in his head or made him do things slightly differently.
Yes.
And then that ended up making just that little tiny thing made it so that he doesn't die.
Yeah, if you told me I was going to die meeting a group of people, I would probably be more cautious now, obviously, with my life. Yeah. Maybe I would be less aggressive. Maybe Duncan went in there guns a-blazing the first time. In one timeline, that's how he goes in. He just goes in unknowingly, guns a-blazing. I have to just put these people down because that's just what I'm instructed to do. Where in reality, and this is the cool thing about it, the Fremen, no one knows how many people there actually are. The Harkonnens who inhabited the planet before House Atreides got there thought that there were only 50,000 of them. Apparently, Duncan confirms that there are actually fucking millions of them. He went to one city out of hundreds of cities, and that one city had 10,000 people. And they asked him, how many cities are there? And he was like, hundreds.
Yep.
So he went to just one place, met Freeman one time, and there was 10,000 of them in this one pocket of the underground world. Because they only, again, the planet is just covered in sand. It's a fucking desert planet, and they speak about the heat often. It's so outrageously hot that plants don't grow there. Like all the life there is basically just, if anything that's alive there can survive in extreme heat conditions, and there's not much. It's
Yeah,
like,
the only ones. So this is another thing that's really interesting is the only people, the only greenery, the only plant life that exist, they exist because of the Fremens.
yeah,
They say that like whenever you see greenery, like there's a part. I think Jessica says it. Like they spot greenery and then they're like, "Oh, Fremens are there." This is toward the end of the movie, but and then there's a part where they go to like a underground spot and there's like greenery. Anyway, they make it clear that the only greenery that exists are because of the Fremens. And there's a part early in the movie when there's a guy tending to these palm trees,
yeah,
and he's like, these one palm tree takes as much water as like 5 men would need in a day. There's 20 palm trees, and he's like, that's 100 lives, like a
that's exactly
day
right.
of water that's used on these palm trees. And then, so Paul, which I think is a noble thing to do, him being of a pretty honorable house.
Yeah,
His
and he's
father
the
is like
heir to the
very
throne.
yeah, and his father's very honorable, and like you can tell that from certain events that happen. Paul's like, well, should we just save the water? Like, let's just give the water to the
Yeah, he
people. Like, why are
immediately
we?
once he's told that, he immediately wants to get rid of the fucking trees. He's like, at that point, if we could save lives, or you better use this water, because water is a sacred resource on this
Yeah,
planet. So when he finds out that 100 lives could basically be saved by getting rid of these trees that are kind of for show, he's like, yeah, let's fucking do it. Like, let's get rid of them. And the guy says, no, actually, it's best that we do keep the trees because they represent old dreams, like an old realm.
yeah, and it's interesting because they just show a lot of not a lot, I guess, but there's a part where they go with Dr. Leah Kynes, when they go to like this on, and she says it's like an old ecology building and that's been abandoned, and there's like greenery in there as well, and it makes it seem like because she says like we had like a mission to like bring life to this planet, like I think she says Arrakis could have been a paradise, but then they discovered spice, and like that's when
Yeah.
all the wars started and all this other shit.
Yep.
And but yeah, it's interesting because it seems as though like the dream of the Fremen, or like what they want to do is like they part of their various legends and lores that are passed down is to like make Arrakis a green planet, and they believe that they can do it, and like sort of fight, you know,
Yeah.
not die from the desert.
They're doing such a good job. When Duncan comes back from his meeting with the Fremen, and he was there for 4 weeks, and he learned so much. Like I said, he learned there are millions of them. When the Harkonnen, they're fucking slow, so they thought that there were only 50,000 of them. I don't know how their numbers are that far off, but that just shows you how good the Fremen are at hiding the truth
Yeah,
from them. The Fremen also are very hostile towards anyone who tries to harvest spice, so they naturally just kill people who come there to harvest. Like, that's just what they do. They're basically considered a thorn in the side of anyone who's tasked with going to this planet and mining spice. Like, the Fremen will just kill you if they see you. They do these little sneak attacks where you'll just be kind of standing on sand, and they show visions. In Paul's visions, you'll just see fucking Freeman come up out the sand out of nowhere and just stab you. Like,
yeah,
they're actually so broken. They're actually really, really cool.
they're absurdly strong fighters. There's a really cool, and it's one of those things that it's not blatantly said, but it's like they give you like dots and you just kind of connect them. But there's a part in the movie where they show the I don't know how to Sardaukon or
Yeah,
I don't remember how to say
whatever they're
the name.
called, the evil people, the Harkonnen people.
No,
The
they're the
Saldakar,
people. Yeah, they're the people that are part of the Emperor's army.
Saldakar.
Yeah, and they show them, and they say they have like 3 battalions going at the Harkonnen to like go kill House Atreides.
Mm,
And then the one guy's like, "Why do you even need us? Like, you guys outnumber Atreides. Like, you don't need the Emperor's army." And then one of the dudes, he has like a black line on his lip, and somebody in House Atreides has a black line on their lip. I assume it's like a position. But he says that like they have Duncan and what was the other
the
guy's
guy,
name?
yeah, the guy who plays Thanos. What is it? Oh, Gurney.
Gurney. Yeah, they were like they have Duncan and Gurney, and they make it like these two are fucked up, and you can't like they make it clear that these two are absurdly strong, and then they
Yes.
show like the Sardaukon or whatever the fuck their names are. They're supposed to be like the most elite warriors in the Empire, because like even there's a part where Duncan says like I fought these guys. And then Jessica's like, are you sure it was them? He's like, trust me, when you fight, like if you fight them, you know it's them. And so anyway, my point is, all of that to say, when Duncan found the Fremen, he says that like he fought one of them one on one, and he said, I've never come so close to dying in my life. So like the Fremen just in general are fucking broken.
Yeah, he says that they are the best fighters he's ever seen. They fight like demons.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is exactly what he says. He brings up the fact that they are literally the best fighters he's ever come across. So House Atreides is revered as also a very strong war house. They control as his father puts it, as Paul's father puts it, House Atreides controls the land and the skies. They're very
or the
good.
sea, the
Yeah,
sea and the skies.
The sea and the skies. They're very, very good at fighting people, I guess, in those two territories. Like they just basically have it down. And also their actual fighters, like their men, are very, very good at fighting as well because of the two captains like Duncan Idaho and Gurney Halleck. So those two people being on the side of House Atreides has made them a threat for a long time, it seems. And the Harkonnens just, they go through some kind of grueling training from age 6 that's like on some Hitler Youth League type nonsense that makes them very vicious and very revered as fighters as well. But at the end of the day, the Baron didn't want to take any chances, and he decided to, you know, they have these 3 battalions of Saldakar come too. And they basically, it sucks because you know from the beginning where this is going. I think when they're first ordered to leave, the Harkonnens are ordered by the Emperor to leave Arrakis and give it to House Atreides and let them be the new ones who are going to harvest the spice. And this pisses off the Harkonnens, and one of the main ones, who's actually played by Batista.
Yeah.
So he's screaming at the Baron, who's like the main evil guy, this fat fuck. I don't even know what to call. He's just disgusting and looks scary as hell. But the Baron,
I thought he was a worm.
he does
So
like when he first stands up and his gown gets really long.
Yeah, I was like, oh shit, he's a worm. And then he's not.
He's not.
But when I saw like his gown, the way he floated up, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, he's creepy as hell looking. Very, very creepy. But Batista's yelling at him. He's saying, how dare everything that we built on this planet, they're just going to take it from us and give it to the House Atreides. Like, what the fuck? Like, how could the Emperor do this? And then the Baron just simply says, very calmly, like, when is a gift not a gift?
Yeah.
And so as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh God. And then he, later on, the Baron even says, the Emperor is a very jealous man. And Leto, like the leader of House Atreides, has grown in popularity. People love him all throughout the universe. He's a very liked person. And they're afraid, it's just a power thing. They're afraid of his influence, that one day, you know, maybe people will rise up, or if he ever wanted to rebel against the Emperor or something like that, people would actually support his cause. So he's viewed as a threat because he's such an honorable and noble man, and he's liked by everyone. So the Emperor actually sets up this ploy to pull the Harkonnens off of Arrakis and have House Atreides go there, so that way they can just back attack them and kill them. They were actually sent on what I would refer to as a dummy mission. When the Harkonnens left, they actually left the place in such a bad spot where House Atreides really couldn't even do their job anyway. All of the equipment that they left there, they don't have the proper resources or tools to actually mine the spice. So they're sent there to do this. Like, it's like your boss is telling you, I need you to do this for me, and I'm taking it from this guy, I'm giving it to you. But when they do that, they don't give you a fucking laptop. They're like, I want you to just like come up with these numbers, come up with these figures. Like, I'm speaking in terms of myself because I'm an accountant. Like, imagine having to do my job without fucking Microsoft Excel. Like, here's a laptop, but it doesn't have the internet. It doesn't have Microsoft Excel, but I still want you to do the exact same job that the guy before you did, who had these things. He had the internet and he had Excel. I want you to do that without it.
They show up and there's like a bunch of silos, and you see, let's just say there's 10 silos, like 10 sections, and each of the 10 have like 10 little silos you can put on them. They're all empty except for like one, and it's just like, okay. Like, they emptied out everything, and then they, in my opinion, clearly sabotaged the other equipment, even the little equipment that was left. There's a part where they go out, and there's like this giant beetle-looking machine that is mining the spice. And then, like, the worm is coming, and they send, like, this, I don't know, not a helicopter, but they send, like, this helicopter thing to, like, go down and save it. And then, like, one of the things breaks, and it, like, doesn't work. And it's like, dude, that shit was sabotage. And then even Liet Kynes, like, who I would say is arguably a neutral party in this, but she was also commanded to be, like, she knew that things were fucked up, but she's like, oh no, like that was just old. Like the desert's not kind to equipment, and it's like, man, that's bullshit. Like you know, it was sabotaged.
Yeah. Yeah, so they've been sent to do this dummy mission, and it's not a good look. As soon as they get there, Paul's dad, he realizes exactly what's going on. And he's not, they're not stupid. They're like, God damn it, the Emperor is sabotaging us. Like, we're being told to go here. They even say there's this one line about living on Arrakis, in order to shower, you have to wipe your ass with sand. Like, that's pretty
Yeah,
much the only way to clean yourself on Arrakis, because the water is it's that hard to find water on this planet. And there's even parts where they have to close the doors because it's that hot. Like, they have to seal off all the doors, they say, because the sun is at its peak and it's just too hot to have that level of heat coming in indoors where they live in like this gigantic pyramid. So it's all bad.
there's a.
It's real bad.
It's interesting too, though, because right from the so it's interesting because obviously we'll learn, I guess, more later. Uh, it's done in a way where clearly they don't want you to know the emperor's not even shown. They don't want you to know the full scope of what the emperor has planned. But when the movie starts, like pretty much from the beginning, everybody already knows that it's a trap. Like
Yes.
there's a part where the the all mother basically says Paul like I hope you survive. There's a part where Paul and his dad are talking and he's talking about going there and then Paul says like they were told to go to Arrakis and Paul kind of once again is like, "Oh, why? So we can just be the like essentially their new slave masters. Like we're not going to be any better than the Harkonnens."
Yeah.
Yeah, cuz he's like but
Well,
then
Paul
Paul's
also
dad
wants
says,
to fight. Like he wants to be on the front lines. He's the kind of kid who's naturally a rebel. He doesn't really want to just sit there and be the heir to the throne and that's it. Like he knows
yeah.
how to fight. He wants to go out and actually help and do things on like he doesn't want to be just a son who lives a lavish life and is always kind of coddled by his parents because he was born into riches. Like that's not what he wants
Yeah,
to do.
and he can scrap. Like, I mean, to be fair, he's been trained by Duncan and Gurney.
Yep.
He's been trained by both of them, and then later on, you realize he's just even more broken because he can just cheat and see the future,
Yes.
and he can kind of like he can do this thing where he can lose the fight 3 million times in his in the future, and
Yep.
then learn how to win.
Yeah, it's actually so absurd that voice ability, the Bene Gesserit powers that he has, the visions, the dream, all of that stuff. It all culminates into making him the most broken individual on the planet. And so in a fight, he can literally kind of Sharingan you. He can see what you're going to do before you do it, and then it makes it where he can't be beat. Like in a one-on-one fight, you really can't beat him. And they showed that at the very end of the movie when he fights against a guy named Jameis. But yeah, the movie does a good job of basically portraying the strained relationship between House Atreides and the Harkonnens, who are actually related. The trap set by the Emperor and the Baron for House Atreides, and then eventually it all culminates into a night attack after they do their first, excavation mission where they go to save that one machine that's kind of harvesting spice. When they get back that night, they're attacked, and they just got there. Like I want to almost say this is like the first week of them being there, and they get attacked immediately.
Yeah, it does happen pretty quick.
They don't let them get their bearings on this planet at all. They don't even get to deliver spice. Like the dad is still wondering, at the end of the day, I need to deliver spice. And if I don't, it's going to be a bad job. Like it's going to be bad. So I need to get shit running and up and running on this planet. And you're not helping. He's saying that to the doctor. And she's like, I don't really care about that. Like, that's not really my job. That
Yeah.
part, like that has nothing to do with me. But yeah, I'm gonna just give you the ropes of how the desert works. Like I'm just here to help you to learn how the desert works, but I'm not here to actually help you fix this equipment. If they sabotage you, that's your problem, not mine. But it's very clear that this entire house has been fucking set up to die and be killed, and by jealous emperor and the Baron, the leader of the Harkonnens.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, once again, they go into this knowing that it's a trap. Like, before they even go there, they make it clear that most of House Atreides already knows it's a setup. But they get there, and the big thing is they thought they had more time because they get there, and there's a part where I don't remember his name, but he's like kind of a fat guy, and he's the other guy with like the black line on his
Yeah,
lip.
I know exactly what you're talking about. He's played by like a light skinned black gentleman, and he's kind of
Yeah,
chubby, right? Yeah, he always lets Leto know if someone's coming. He's like, oh, they just arrived, or oh, there was 1.4 million people and stuff like that. He always,
yeah.
yeah,
He's like he's like a bastion of knowledge.
yeah,
So there's a part where they're talking. I think it's after Duncan comes back and they find out that there's millions of Fremen. and that's when and the Harkonnens thought there was 50,000. So they look at each other, Leto and this other guy, this like fat gentleman. I don't remember his name unfortunately, but he basically says like we were right. And so like the plan will work. It'll just take time. And so like and they say a couple times throughout the movie like to cultivate desert power, which is just like to work with an ally with the Fremen because of how powerful they are, etc., and how many they are. And so their whole plan was to come here, even though they knew it was a trap. But for some reason, they had some information. Like the fat guy seemed to have known that for some reason, he knew there was more than 50,000. He was like, that was like kind of part of their plan, and they were setting shit up. I don't know, it's really interesting. Like the movie does things where it puts these really like kind of subtle plot points or like subtle things in there, and you kind of just have to like extrapolate on them.
Yeah.
As as it goes on and figure things out.
So pretty early on, there's an assassination attempt made at Paul, which I thought was pretty interesting. They send in this fucking little wasp-looking thing. It looks like an insect flying in.
They called it a hunter seeker.
Yeah, he's watching, some kind of documentary essentially. He's watching a documentary, just chilling, big chilling in his room, and he kind of gets up off of pure, just I guess, instinct to go look at the documentary a bit closer, but as he does that, there's a hole directly behind where his back was at, and you see this little tiny wasp looking thing with a pointed nose, like a stinger on a nose, and it comes out. He turns around and sees it, and it's almost like the thing is looking for him, but it doesn't quite know where he's at yet, so he's staring at it move throughout the room, and it's just kind of like doing its own thing, and he kind of fades into the shadows, and then it notices him, and it gets really, really close to his face. And then the second somebody opens the door to come into his room, the thing kind of like jabs forward almost to kill him, and he kind of moves to the side and grabs it. So I'm assuming that he used his premonition ability there because it was like perfect timing the way he did that, or just, the fact that he can actually fight. But a combination of all those things, again, makes him very, very formidable just when you're trying to kill him, I guess, because it seems to be very difficult to do so. So he dodges it, he grabs it, and then his dad is pissed. Obviously, this is a big deal. They just tried to kill the prince. They look throughout the walls because to control that wasp thing, you have to be pretty close to it, they say.
Yep.
So they destroyed the walls, and they found out that there was a Harkonnen left in the walls weeks ago, like before they ever arrived, and he had been living off of like water and a still suit. You see like the coil wrapped around his body so that he could survive in the wall without any food or water or anything, like just what he had.
They were dedicated.
Very dedicated assassin. So he's been in the walls for a very, very abnormally long amount of time just for this mission to kill someone, like to kill Paul, to kill, someone in the royal house of Atreides. And he fails. They kill him, of course. But yeah, then Duncan goes out. Duncan comes back with one of the Fremen leaders. And it's a really awkward scene where they meet Leto and they like spit on the ground in front of him. It looks like a sign of disrespect because that's how pretty much every other culture looks at spitting on the ground in front of somebody. But apparently, because moisture and because water is such a coveted resource on Arrakis, it's actually considered a sign of respect. In fact, It's actually the highest form of respect to give somebody the moisture from your body, as they put it.
Yeah.
So you spit back. That's a sign that I highly respect you.
It's very cool too because it's one of those things where any reader or watcher and like they would look at that and be like, "Oh, obviously that's a sign of disrespect. Like he just spit on the floor." But when you take into the context that they literally live on a desert planet where the sun, when it reaches its peak in the sky, like you can't even be outside for 2 hours without dying.
Yeah.
When you think about there's no water, like how coveted water is as a resource.
Yes.
It's actually a very interesting take on it that like water has so much value, like spitting, that's you giving up some of that water, some of that resource. So it's such a cool thing because if you were like really smart, you might be able to figure it out ahead of time. You know what I mean? Because like that's how important water is.
Yeah, it's that.
But like
secret.
most people are going to be like they'll get taken for the loop. But it is something that makes complete sense.
You see his soldiers and his guards pull their weapons and everything. Like they're ready to fight when they see that guy spit. And then they're like, hold up. Duncan tells them like, yo, chill. And this is actually a big sign of respect. You always spit when you respect somebody. You're like, you know what I mean? So that is pretty cool to use it. Water is so sacred. There's a scene in this movie with a little tiny critter that looks like he is a mouse. They just show him like once or twice throughout the movie. They just show this little critter, and they zoom in on it at one point, and you see that it's sweating from its ears. Yeah. And it grabs, it like swipes the sweat from its ear and like puts it in its mouth.
Yeah, it literally grabs the sweat and drinks it. It's
And so
crazy.
I love that because that shows you how the influence of still suits. That's pretty much how they came to be. The idea of reusing the moisture that is leaving your body and like the animal literally did what a still suit does. It recycled the water. I'm sweating. I'm going to use this and drink it because I want to return it to my body as opposed to letting it like fall in the sand and then just be lost.
Yeah,
So it's
and it's an
cool.
animal, so it did it just so instinctually. You know
Yes.
what I mean?
It's so cool. And like it's a made up creature. It's not an actual monster. It actually looks kind of decent. Like it looks like something that I wouldn't be scared of in real life. Like the same way when I look at a squirrel, I'm not exactly afraid of squirrels. Like I kind of see them. If I see a mouse, I'm freaked out. If I see a rat, I'm freaked out. Possum, anything like that.
Yeah,
But
it
this little thing
was
looks
kinda
so
like a mouse rabbit, right?
yeah,
Like
it does.
it
It
was
has
like a
big
mouse
ears.
rabbit. Yeah.
Yeah, it has big ears, but it has the body of a mouse. I don't know. It was just cute. It was a cute little thing. You see it like drinking its own little sweat. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
But as soon as I saw it, I said, "Oh, that's where they got the idea of still." So that's pretty much how humans are in general. We learn from animals and from the environment how to do things. It's pretty much how everything is inspired. When we watch beavers make dams, right? Like that's what beavers
Mhm.
do. And then what do? We took and did it in the industrial way. But yeah, so you find out little things like that, little world building like that. I love little. It's a really quick shot when they show that little animal do that, and I was like, oh, okay. So there's stuff like that going on. But yeah, so the night attack happens, and his dad is killed. Not immediately, but you find out that their doctor betrayed them. So there's like this Asian doctor, and he had been like checking the prince's vitals throughout the movie, and just kind of giving little words of advice and stuff like that here and there. But come to find out, he's the guy that lowered the shields of House Atreides on the planet, and he also essentially allowed
Told
the sneak
the
attack to go through. And when
He also messed the comms up. He, like, jammed the comms.
yeah,
That
he
it gets revealed because when they first land, they talk about how, like, their comms are fucked up, and they're like, "We can't get through, like, our comms are messed up," and they're just, like, kinda pissed.
yeah, so he
But
sabotaged everything. And when the father has been caught by one of those hunter secret things, it actually stabs him in the back and it puts him down immediately. So you see what it would have done to Paul. It doesn't kill him right away, but he is out of commission for the rest. Like that one thing put him out of commission for the entire duration of his life from that point on. And the Asian guy walks up to him, the doctor, and he says to him, he's like, "Why did you do it?" He's like, "Well, they have my wife." And he's like, "But I promise you that I will do everything I can for your son. So like I'm gonna help out Paul, but like your life and your family's life, the rest of you guys, I had to fuck over because they had my wife." And so it's one of those things that really does suck, but I kind of get it, right? In a sense of like, someone's wife is captive by the Harkonnens. Like the Baron has this guy's wife, and he's doing what he can to save his family, but it's at the cost of backstabbing his current king. It's just a really Game of Thronesy sticky situation.
so, this is to talk about, like, a small complaint I have. Basically, this is when first of all, I think the movie's very watchable. I watched it twice, and you said you watched it twice, and you can tell me what you think. I felt like the movie it's 2.5 hours long, right? But it's very watchable. Like, it doesn't feel like a drag to watch, like,
No, I did
all
not have a problem watching this movie at all.
yeah, like the movie flows really well, and like on rewatch, you notice things that you didn't notice before. But I don't know, the movie's very watchable. I really do like it, and so I get things like that. The point that I'm trying to get to is I do wish that it was like a 4 hour movie, like Lord of the Rings, or
Oh
once
shit.
again, like I always say, like because all the Lord of the Rings movies are like 4 hours, or just like a series
Yeah.
of episodes, and it's only because no matter how much you put into the movie when adapting such a large book, obviously there's things that you leave out. And I just with Dr. Yue, now this isn't coming from any book knowledge because, like I said, I listened to the audiobook a really long time ago, and I don't even remember Dr. Yue. So this isn't like anything I remember from the book. But in the movie, he has like two scenes, and then he's the traitor, and it's like I just wish the movie's a bit longer to like give more characters time to breathe so that like we
Yeah,
could
that's true.
be with Dr. Yue more. So that
Okay.
way
I didn't know
the
where you were going with
treachery
this at all, but I see what you mean.
like hits you harder. You know
Yeah,
what I
because I
mean?
didn't
Because like
feel anything when I saw it. I'll tell you that.
yeah, so like when the treachery happened, on one end I was like, man, that sucks, but I was only saying that because it was like the guys I'm rooting for got betrayed.
Yes,
You
but
know what I
not
mean?
because you know who Yue is. You know how close he is to the prince and to the dad and everything like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Like
really mean much to know that this guy betrayed someone.
yeah, like Dr. Yue seems like a very important character based on what we do see, but on top of that, what we do see is just kind of him like giving the prince a checkup 2 times, and
Yeah,
like,
and also he
and then he
doesn't live
betrays.
very long after that. So after he does betray House Atreides, he goes to the Baron to get his reward, and the Baron's like, "What did I promise you again?" And he's like, "I did everything you asked me. I sabotaged their comms. I fucking lowered their shields." He's like, "Yes, the bargain to like the T, right? Like you did everything to the T, exactly what you were supposed to do. And what was I supposed to give you for it?" And he's like, "You're supposed to free my wife of her agony or whatever." And he's like, "Oh yes."
Yeah.
And he floats over to him, and he cuts his head off.
Yeah, he says like I promised you would be together or whatever. And he was like, so join her, and then he kills him.
Yeah, he slices him, and it's just assumed like, all right, he beheaded him or whatever. And then he looks down at his cousin, and Leto, and he says, "What do you think is going to happen next, cousin?" And it kind of switches the scene. And then a cool thing is that Dr. Yue, before he, like the whole time when he told him, "I'm going to do what I can for Paul," he gave him this cyanide pill that apparently kills everybody in the room. It like, you bite down on it and it releases this toxic gas that you can exhale. And of course you will die, but it will also kill everyone around you, which seems so outrageously broken because of how fast it works.
Dude, they immediately started choking and dying and shit. Like,
it was so fast that I said, "There's no fucking way I would give that to somebody." Because if I just backstabbed you, right? Like, think about that. I just backstabbed you. I just traded on you, and I'm giving you a pill that can kill everybody in the vicinity, and I'm in the vicinity. There's no way. So I was like, that seems a bit wild to me, but like, I just kind of gloss over that little detail because like, you're not going to use it on me. You want to use it on the Baron. And that's kind of what he was instructing him to do. Like, yeah, you're going to die, but at least your last breath can also be the last breath of the Baron. And so he does try to use it on the Baron, and it works on everybody else in the room. But then the Baron does some fucking evil magic shit and goes up to the ceiling, and he doesn't die from it. But it does hurt him.
The technology of because they say it's like year fucking like 10,200. Like it's way in the future.
Yeah,
and so, there's absurd technology. Obviously, there's travel between planets. But, like, this fat guy, I almost assume to the point he's so fat and, like, such a lard that he can't even really move on his own. It's also possible, like you said earlier, that spice extends your life. And being that he's in charge of gathering spice, that he's used spice to live a little bit longer than he should, making it so that on top of him being fat and on top of him maybe being very old, it's hard for him to move around. But he has like this flotation technology that he uses at all times. Like, it doesn't seem like he can really even get around without it.
Yeah, I'll also say this. So I know this from watching like random YouTube videos and just researching the Dune lore. But he is actually in that condition because of the Bene Gesserit. They actually sabotaged him. I think it was actually the Reverend Mother too, the main one.
Oh, interesting.
She actually did that to him. He used to be beautiful and young and had a body like Batista and those guys, like the generals. Like he used to be just like that, and apparently kind of good looking. But for whatever reason, the Bene Gesserit decided to do that to him and made him this fat, nasty, like gluttonous person that lost all his hair, lost his beautiful body, can barely move around without that flotation thing. And yeah, they just kind of turned him into a creature, but it was on purpose. And it was for a reason of this greater timeline thing, the golden timeline. Like everything that the Bene Gesserit does is for that purpose. It's they don't really waste using their abilities and the manipulation powers for no reason. They don't just do it for their own benefit. They do it kind of to promote this like world where people are going to live the best they ever could possibly live. So that's like a little thing that I only know because of like researching YouTube. It's not in the movie.
They get like a bad rap from everybody in the series. Like it seems like nobody really likes them or trusts them. Like in a weird way, they have a high position. They have a high position, right? Like the Emperor, has like a member of the Bene Gesserit, the leader of House Atreides. They get these high positions, but in these high positions, it also seems as though no one trusts them.
Yeah,
and so they're like let's say a shadow government, right? And so as untrustworthy as they are, and as much as blah blah blah. It does seem as though that their motives are noble. Like, it doesn't seem like they're evil. It doesn't seem like they're evil. It seems as though that they are really trying to do something for the betterment of the universe.
Yes, that is definitely the case that I got from it too. They look more evil than they are. Like, they're dressed in all black and have veils. If you saw these people, you would assume naturally that they are bad guys, but they actually apparently are not. From what I understand, they're actually good people. So, there's that. They just happen to have these ridiculous abilities that I think are so cool. Again, I cannot get over that voice and the whole just being able to tell somebody what to do. And after the night attack, like House Atreides is virtually wiped out. Dad dies. The rest of everyone dies. Like his trainer dies.
Gurney or
Gurney,
Duncan?
yeah, Gurney dies. Duncan.
Do we see Gurney die?
Okay,
Because I know we see Duncan die, and Duncan goes out like a goddamn
yes,
fucking
we
champion.
do see Duncan die. So the first time Duncan gets like jumped, you don't see what happens to him, but they kind of make it seem like he might die, and then come to find out he didn't, and then he gets jumped later on again, and he actually dies right there, 100%. We don't really see Gurney die. You're right. So it's likely that he could actually be alive in later movies, but the last you see him, the odds against him are so bad that it looks.
The odds are bad, but I right now in my head lore, he's equal to Duncan just because of the way they talked about the two of them.
Yeah.
And I watched Duncan solo like 17 of them.
He did
like,
so legit a fucking score of those people. So he's he's apparently very broken. When they show him going against the Saldikar and the Harkonnens, they're so outnumbered that it's kind of implied. But again, they didn't show his death on screen, so for that purpose, he probably is actually still alive. So after the night attacks happen and House Atreides is virtually wiped out, you get to a point where his mom, because the Baron did promise that he would not harm Paul and Jess. So the Reverend Mother is speaking to the Baron.
Dude, I think this is such a bad plan. Like, I don't agree. I think this plan does not work, but go ahead.
So the Bene Gesserit, like the Reverend Mother's like, yo, you can do whatever you want to everyone else, but just, we have certain conditions and certain things that we are asking of you. Do not kill Paul and do not kill Jess, his mom. And the Baron's like, absolutely, I won't do those things. Then as soon as the Bene Gesserit lady leaves, their little, I guess, I don't know what the assistant dude, he's like, yo, what the fuck? Like, why would you not kill them? He's like, I said that I wouldn't kill them myself, but what we will do is kind of throw them out in the desert and they can't possibly survive out there. So it's the same thing, except I didn't kill them. I just kind of put them in a condition where they can't survive. So he finds a way around it. Like, he's so sneaky. And this is his workaround to still find a way to kill Paul and his mom. So I was like, okay, I get it.
This plan to me just seems so bad because we find out that she is what they call the truth seer or the truth seer.
Truth sayer of the Emperor, yes.
Something like that. Yeah, I wasn't sure. But anyway, she's like, apparently she can like tell, she knows if you're telling the truth, right? Or she can see the truth, see through lies, all that stuff. And we also just know she's fucking broken.
Yes.
We also know that she's absurdly powerful with a voice. So even if you do lie to her, I feel like she could just say, tell me what happened. And then, like, you would just tell her what happened, and you wouldn't even know that you did it. So it's just like, they have this plan where they're like, well, I'm not the one that killed them. Yeah. I'm just going to set it up so that they die. And I'm looking at this, and, like, obviously, I know Paul's the main character, and that, like, he's not going to die.
Not yet.
I did think maybe his mom would die, but
me too.
I
was surprised that she actually made it through this entire ordeal.
Same.
I thought for sure she was dead.
I thought she was going to die. I thought she was going to die, and then he would, make it to the end. But she doesn't die either. But my whole thing is, I think their plan was so bad. Like, if I promise this lady that I'm not killing
you're talking about the Baron, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. The Baron and the Harkonnen, like, his plan to, like, I'm not going to be the one that kill them, but I will make sure they die.
Because I get what you're saying, but I do wonder if that's how you have to lie to the Bene Gesserit. You have to do it in a way like that. Because I wonder if their abilities are not 100% all-knowing, all-powerful, because she had to ask Paul questions like, do your dreams always come true? So they're not all-knowing, thankfully, because they would just be entirely too powerful. So there's still things that I guess I want to say are hidden from their third eye. Like, there are things that you can actually get off that they might not be privy to. For example, like the fact that she decided to just have a son instead of having a daughter, like stuff like that. Like, they didn't predict that this was going to happen. She kind of she went against it and is like, well, fuck, that wasn't part of the plan. So I wonder if when the Baron lies and says, yeah, I'm not killing them, and he really isn't, he just is putting them in a situation where they couldn't possibly survive. It's like a weird workaround. And like you said, it's not exactly the most sound plan, but I feel like if this movie was 4 hours, they might have a chance to explain there are ways to get around their sight. Like, I feel like that would be like a scene or something that the Baron says when she walks away. Like, those witches think they know everything, but there's blind spots in their visions. Something like that.
Yeah. It's just one of those things where I feel like you could just word the question. Like, if the question is just like word it like, were you in any way responsible for Paul's death? And it's like, now what do you say?
Yeah,
like,
like See, Kenny, you've been playing too much. What's that game with the attorney, Ace Attorney or whatever?
Oh, yeah, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney.
Phoenix, right? Yeah, you've been playing
Like,
so much of that. You're like, yeah, I'm
that's
not
my
dealing with
thing
this.
though,
Like
like, because
semantics.
that's the way I think of that shit. Like, the semantics and stuff, like,
Yeah, well, don't ever have kids because when they try to
I
lie to you, you're gonna be like you're gonna be awful to them.
dude, I get into the semantics of that stuff so much
Like your
because
kids are gonna try to be clever, and you're not gonna be having it at all.
not at all. Because like he's acting like the question he's going to get asked is, "Did you kill her?"
Yeah,
And
like
it's like
motherfucker, we
that's not
know,
the question I'm going to ask.
right? Like, did you aid in the death of Paul and Jess? And
Right.
there's only one answer to that question. Like, earlier in the movie, there's another scene where Jess, Paul's mom, is choosing to, like a housekeeper, and she chooses a woman. She makes all the other ones leave, and the woman has a Chris knife on her. So she's like, I know right now. And Jess, the Bene Gesserit, she has this ability where, again, they just have so many abilities, but she just knows that this woman is armed with a weapon. She's like, I know right now on your hip is a Chris knife.
Yeah, that's one of those things where I don't know if it was, let's say, magic. I don't know if it was part of like her way that she knew that she was armed, or if it's just the fact. You know how in action movies, people will just know like you have a gun on your ankle because they're like so well trained in combat. I don't know if it was like part of her magic power that she knew she was armed, or the fact that randomly Jessica and I assume the rest of the Bene Gesserit are fucking boxers. Like they can fight. Like you
Yeah,
find out later, like she can legit fight. Like it wasn't just because of the voice
yeah,
that in the earlier in the movie when she said your mom's guarding the door, no one will make it past her. It's not
yeah.
just because of the voice. She will beat your like she can fight.
Yeah,
So
I do think that it is part of the Bene Gesserit like ability though, that they just know things that they are not blatantly told.
mhm.
So when she says that, I'm just gonna chalk it up to that. But regardless, that's not their here nor there. She says like you have a cursed knife on you, like it's on your hip, and the woman reveals it. And then her guard, she's also doing sign language at the same exact time with her hands.
Yeah, yeah.
So her guard, she's like, be prepared for violence. She tells her guard with her fingers, which I think is so cool that she's speaking two languages at once. I think that in itself is such a cool feat to me. Like you can
Dude,
speak
sign language
literally,
is so unfair.
it's
Like
so
when you
broken.
think about it in a tactical sense, it's so unfair. Like because it happened multiple times in the movie where she's in a situation and then they use sign language secretly to like
Yes.
convey
And
information to
I'll
each
talk
other.
about that right after this. So yeah, she uses sign language to her guard. She's like, be prepared for violence. And the woman pulls the knife out, but she doesn't use it in an aggressive way. She kind of makes this loud scream type of noise. And she says something along the lines of to live your whole life hearing about these prophecies and to know that they're so close to coming true is overwhelming. And that's what made her kind of yell out. And like this, it's like a religious yell though.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
a I'm
yeah.
close to God type of yell. That's what it gave me, that vibe. And so when she does
That,
it, yeah.
I was gonna say that's what I was like talking about earlier in that it seems to me that she's talking about this prophecy and then like this arrival of Paul and his mother and they say like the prophecy of the mother and the son. It seems as though like this is part of the Bene Gesserit, like her being part of like this religious her believing in this religious prophecy. It's not something that the Bene Gesserit did in 4 days because they realized that they're going to Arrakis. This is something that they've done over time, right? Like
Yes.
it seems as though they've embedded this religion, and it's like so that future members of the Bene Gesserit will be able to continue that
They
manipulation.
even
And that's
say that they have been crossing bloodlines for centuries to get to this
yeah,
point. So they've been like choosing exactly who's going to breed with who. For example, Jess and Leda are not even married.
they're not.
Like that's considered his concubine or whatever, as the Baron puts it. So it's really interesting because I just assumed that like, oh, his parents are married. Like they're
I also assume they were married until obviously she gets called a concubine, and then like the night before Leto dies,
he says I should have married you.
yeah, he says like I should have married
So
you.
she was literally supposed to be just someone to give him an heir. But the Bene Gesserit didn't want him to have a son. They want him to just have daughters so that he doesn't have a proper heir. And yeah, come to find out, they're not even married. There's just a lot of cool things with that whole lore as well. And apparently she fell in love with him. So Jess fell in love with Leto, and that's why she gave him a son. This is another thing that I found out from my YouTube research because they don't illicitly say it, I feel like. But that's the reason why she defies the Bene
Yeah,
Gesserit rule of like, don't let him bring in a son.
they don't. Yeah, I don't think you ever hear them say like "I love you" to each other. But in that, in that scene, once again, one of those small nitpicks where it's like, man, I wish this movie was 4 hours, right? Where I realized that like that's the only scene they have together. Like I wish I got to once again see them spend more time together.
Yeah.
But
And she's
regardless,
pregnant. His mom is pregnant too.
yeah. But in that last scene, I did feel as though I did, even though they really only had one scene together, I did feel as though they loved each other.
Yeah, it was that one scene, but you knew from that scene where he kind of rests his head between her legs and she starts to massage his head.
Yeah.
And he's like, "This is, this is where I want you to be right now." He just needs. He's so stressed out. The task he's been given again is just a fucked up one. It's a sabotage one. He's aware of it. She's aware of it. Everyone knows it. It's kind of one of those things like, all right, we're making the best out of a fucked situation here, and he's the guy. He's the leader. So when you're the leader and you're responsible for all these other people and everything, it just sucks. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. So he's just stressed out.
Yeah, I think she offers to give him what this isn't like explicitly stated even what this is, but there's like a little pill, like a drug that I think they take to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Because Paul takes one before he goes to bed. Not that we see him take it, but Dr. Yue brings it in and gives it to him like on a tray. And then that same tray is in their room, Leto and Jessica's room. And I think, although I don't feel like I heard I feel like she offers to give him the pill so he can go to sleep and he denies it, and that's when he says like that's when he like lays on her lap. But because what's interesting is that she and Paul, for example, they sleep through most of the attack, whereas Leto wakes up, and I think it's because like he didn't take that drug that they used to help sleep.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's just interesting because I wonder if the main reason why he didn't take it, like he was stressed, and it's like it seemed like he felt like things were going bad, so like he didn't take the sleeping pill.
Yeah, you need to be aware. Yeah, I think that there's definitely something to be said about that. Like he was just kind of privy to it. I mean, he's a smart guy. He's been leading this house for a long time. He's a very honorable, revered person. Like he makes good decisions, and he's like, at this current time, I need to be alert. I need to be able to come to my senses at any quick moment because you don't know what the fuck is really going on. This is also, again, I don't know if it's their first night, but I feel like it's given first night there. So like, I need to be still on my P's and Q's here.
Yeah, I don't think it's their first night. It's hard to tell how much time has passed. But
Yeah,
like it is
they only
still
show they only really show like one nightfall, and the first nightfall they show is when they get attacked. I feel like
yeah, because so much stuff happens where it's like I like it can't be their first night, right? But I mean, I guess it might be.
Yeah, this could have all legit like again, I don't know. But when I watched it again today, it did seem like there wasn't much of a transition from like day to day. It was just like, all right, we landed here. We're gonna go out to go see the see different places and stuff like that. But like you said, there's no, because it's how much happens, unless they start at the top of the morning and this just all went in for like a really, really long day. I doubt that it was all one day. But I think that the point is the fact that Kenny and I can't tell if it's one day means that it does happen quickly.
It is quickly. Yeah, it is quickly. It doesn't feel as though regardless if it's a day or a week. It's not much. It's not a month. I know that.
They don't get, well, definitely not a month because he needs to get spice delivered and he never gets spice delivered. So let's just be clear. This happens so fast that it's either one day or like a couple days at most.
Yeah.
And so the director wanted to make it clear that this happens quick. They get sent there Arrakis and they get attacked in less than a fortnight. And so, yeah, Paul and his mom, they survive. They're on this fucking flying dragonfly. That's how
I love their like dragonfly helicopter.
It looks so cool.
They are so sick.
As I was watching the movie, I was like, I wonder if that could be possible because it looks so much better than a helicopter. Like obviously helicopters are also inspired by dragonflies too. They look exactly the same. But this one, instead of having a propeller on the top, spinning around in a circle, it has actual dragonfly wings, like 4 wings, and they kind of like flutter, and that's how it flies. But it makes a really cool sound like an actual insect, and it looks cool too. So they're on one of those things, and they're surrounded by Harkonnen. And his mom is gagged because of her ability, but Paul is not. And again, this goes back to them not knowing that Paul can actually use the voice. So the second the mom looks over at Paul, she says, "Don't do it. You're not well trained in it yet." Right? Like don't, like she knows he's planning to use the voice.
Using the sign language.
Yep. Using sign language. She's speaking to him and she's like, "Don't do it." Right? Like you're gonna fuck this up. And he tries it anyway. He's like, "Remove her gag." And the fucking one Harkonnen just like backhands him. He's like, "Shut the fuck up." And his mom is like, "Your pitch was off." You know what I mean? Like this is like at this point she's like, "All right, fuck it. If this was what you're gonna do,
you're gonna do it, that's fine.
Yeah, if you're gonna do it, let me like help you, right? Like your pitch was off." So she tells him his pitch was off, And then they're like, how about we throw him out? Like they just randomly is like, yo, let's just throw him out. Then they start having this little small talk about I've never been with a highborn woman before.
Yeah, they just start blatantly talking about raping
Yes, they
Jessica.
like insinuate rape, and it's really dark. And I was like, okay, like what the fuck? But this is the type of shit that always happens. I swear, if you just let men, I guess, attack and pillage any kind of civilization, there's always going to be that. Like, I guess that just is a natural thing that happens. In Game of Thrones, they even say like when men get the heat of battle on them, they become like frenzied in the mind, like wild animals.
Yeah.
And so they start saying this. They start saying like I've never been with a highborn woman before. And so that's when Paul gets pissed because like you're not just going to say this about my mom in front of me. Like that's wild. So he's like remove her gag. He gets backhanded. They talk about throwing him out, and then as the guy like gets up, he gets in Paul's face and he like opens the door to the helicopter thing. And so now like you can see the desert below them, and Paul looks up at him. He's like remove her gag, and the actual voice happens this time, and he actually removes the gag. And then as soon as he removes the gag, the mom starts using the voice. She's like, kill him. And he immediately just
Kill
kills
him. Untie us.
Yes.
Stop. Like she just
Give me the
starts.
knife. Yes, like she's broken. Her voice is so like blatant. And mind you, what I thought was cool is that when Paul was using the voice, it was super quiet because the doors were closed. When she does it, the door is open and it's loud as hell now. Like imagine being in an airplane and there's a door open. Like
Yeah.
it's super loud, but it just shows you how powerful her voice ability is over like Paul's at the time, because hers transcends the sound that's in the cockpit. But yeah, she gives all of these wild commands like Kenny just said, and they all happen immediately. Like everything she says happens immediately.
Yeah, she definitely is practiced, right? Like she doesn't have the issues Paul has, right? But to be fair, I think Paul is 15. You know, he's young, still learning, and he's not. You know, he's not even supposed to be learning this, right? As my understanding of this, right, the Bene Gesserit, they are trained, like they go through a training. And because he's a boy, and also because he wasn't even supposed to be born,
Right.
he's only being trained by his mom, and probably not getting the same training she got. You know what I mean? So
She
it's
got
going to
trained
take him
by
a
the
bit
Reverend
longer.
Mother. They confirmed that early on that like the person that trained her was actually the highest fucking Bene Gesserit in the land. So
Yeah.
his mom is broken. That's why like I like the hierarchy of this whole thing. Is like, okay, you have the woman above her, but then his mom is apparently very, very good too.
Yeah, I mean, it was really cool early in the movie when the All Mother was like talking to Paul and saying like whatever, and she was saying that like because you're a birth, and he was like, oh, because I'm the Duke's son, and she was like, no, because you're Jessica's son, and it's like, okay,
Yeah. Also, there was a quick little thing in the movie where the Reverend Mother says, "You have two birthrights, my boy." So that was kind of an allusion to the fact that not only are you House Atreides' heir, but you're also the heir of like this great power that the Bene Gesserit have been passing down. They use these really elaborate terms that I'm not even going to try to repeat what they say, but basically they all allude to him being the one, quote unquote.
yeah,
They have all these cool names for it that like really sound Islamic, if I'm being honest. Like a lot of them do.
yeah.
But
Like
yeah,
Lisan Al Gaib, I think is one of them. I'm
yeah,
sure I said it wrong, but it was like something like
they're
that.
really cool names. Like again, they sound very Arabic, very Islamic, and yeah, so they all basically just mean like the one. And yeah, that is at this point we're led to believe that it is Paul because he's having these crazy dreams. I did say earlier that he finds out when they go on their very first expedition and they find that tanker thing that's about to be swallowed by a worm. Paul runs it. This is his first like real run-in with Spice, and he finds that he's quote unquote spice sensitive, which means that like some people like it naturally makes everyone hallucinate a bit, but to him it kind of like it really puts him down. Like he's kneeling on the sand when the worm is about to come and kill like everything in the surrounding area, and he's not even remotely moving or anything like that. And his dad's like, "What the fuck? Like, yo, get up! Like, you need to." Get back on the helicopter thing before we all die. And he's having these visions. He's also speaking out loud to no one in particular. So it's really cool.
I can't wait to see shit like that. I can't wait to see what it meant when he said, "I know your footsteps, old man."
Yes.
There's a part where he says like, "I know your footsteps, old man." I'm like, what does that mean? That's like some Kingdom Hearts shit.
Oh, you know what? That now that you said that, remember we talked about Gurney maybe being alive? There was a part where him and Gurney
in the beginning of the movie.
They have a training
in the beginning
session.
of the movie.
Gurney walks in, and Gurney walks in and Paul's back is turned to him. And he says, I told you about having your back to the door. And it
Yep.
was like, I would always know your footsteps.
Yeah, he
And
says, "I reckon." Yep.
I recognize your footsteps. And he said, yes, but somebody could be, that he uses a specific word for it, but he essentially means somebody could be pretending to use my footsteps
Yeah.
to get up close to you.
And then he still says, like, "I know the difference." What's really cool about this is that, so, okay, that happens at the beginning of the movie. Then there's a part where he's hallucinating and he says, "I know your footsteps, old man." And then the person that saves him is Gurney. But he's not saying it to Gurney right now
Right.
because he's in a hallucination. But Gurney's the one that actually runs up and saves him.
Yeah. So
So
I think it is,
actually,
yeah,
yeah,
I think it is good.
that's
It's
actually
pretty,
really cool.
yeah. And I only just caught that, like literally just now at in this very moment. Do I understand what that most likely means? So, but again, even with his dreams and his hallucinations and stuff, we know that they don't always come true. And sometimes they're just
Yeah.
wrong because he also has this dream of the guy he ends up killing at the end of the movie. He had dreams of that guy training him and stuff.
So this is probably my favorite part of the entire movie. This, I guess, entire sequence where he goes and he has these visions of Jamis is his name.
Yeah.
And in these visions, Jamis and Paul are friends, and Jamis is the one that trains him. He teaches him about the desert. He teaches him how to do the sand walk. And he teaches him like a lot about the culture. And he and Jamis become friends
Yeah.
in this future timeline, right? And then when you get to the end of the movie, and whatever events transpire, Jamis ends up being the person that he has to fight. And so they fight. I'm assuming you've all seen Dune. They fight. Before they fight, Paul has like a fucking vision quest where he sees the fight and he sees himself losing the fight. And then like,
and Chani tells him that, Jamis is a really good fighter. He won't let you suffer. I'm gonna give you this Chris knife because you're gonna die. Like you are going to die,
Yeah.
Jamis. There's no world where you beat him. Because looking at Paul and looking at Jamis, if you just like thought of them person to person, there's no way you'd ever think that this little white boy's about to beat Jamis. There's just no fucking
no
way.
way.
But like she's all basically saying her goodbyes. She's doing everything but saying like, bro, you're dead.
Yeah. And we also know that the Fremen are just like, they went toe to toe with Duncan.
Yes.
So like we know that in a normal fight, there's no way Paul beats Jamis,
Yes.
right? But Paul was in a way trained by Jamis in like the future.
Yes, it's so cool how that works.
All that stuff. And so they end up fighting. Paul wins the fight. And they have a really cool fight. Paul wins. And then what's cool is that in the vision where Paul loses, Jamis reaches down and like grabs his hand. And then when Paul ends up killing Jamis, Paul goes down and grabs his hand. You can almost see like remorse. It almost looks like Paul's about to cry.
Yeah.
And I took that to kind of mean that like he actually feels emotion, like in a way, even though it was visions. I don't really know the time lapse of it all, but it feels as though that he almost already viewed this man as a friend. And so killing him in this timeline.
Yeah, he doesn't want to, clearly, because he puts his knife up to his neck 3 times before he actually kills him. So he doesn't want to, but then the people surrounding him who are watching, they say he doesn't know our way. We won't just like submit in a fight. We will always have to be killed.
Yeah,
so
it's part of like the law.
Yeah, Jamis will not stop fighting at that point. Like you can make him submit and all of that, but it's not going to do anything. Like you have to kill him. If you don't kill him, he'll just kill you instead. So Paul realizes that, and he has to unfortunately kill his futuristic friend.
The other thing I like about this, now, I don't know if this is intentional, but this is one of the cool things about art where it means, what it means to you is sort of what you get out of it in a way. So Jamis in the visions, Jamis in the future is the one that teaches Paul essentially how to be a Fremen. Jamis is like his teacher. It shows him all the things I already said. And so now in this version of the timeline, in this version of events, Jamis doesn't get to do that, but he's already taught Paul things. And then so essentially in this present, Paul killing Jamis in this fight is still Jamis making Paul Fremen, right? Because in the visions, it was the fact that he actually taught him how to be a Fremen, but in this, Paul becomes accepted as a Fremen because he killed Janis in like this ceremonial fight.
Yeah.
And it's just like a really interesting thing that basically, even though the future turned out differently, Jamis is still responsible for Paul becoming a Fremen.
Yeah.
And I find that to be super. Yeah, I find that to be super interesting.
I mean, it's the same thing with Star Wars, which again Star Wars was inspired by Dune and not the other way around. But Star Wars has that whole thing where they say like Anakin was supposed to balance out the Force. And he actually did, though, just not the way they thought. So there were in episode 3, when he kills all of those Jedi, there were a ton of Jedi and only like one Sith Lord at the time, which was
Mm.
Palpatine. Anakin becomes a Sith Lord, so now there's two, and he kills all but two Jedi.
Yep.
So he actually does balance out the Force. And so the Jedi always been talking about these prophecies, right? But like the prophecy came true. Like he did.
Yeah.
He did balance out the Force, just not the way you wanted.
Anakin's like, I am the prince that was promised.
Yeah, like I did exactly what you like. I like now. Yes, there are two Jedi's alive. Like there's fucking what is it? The little green one, Yoda, and I forget Obi-Wan Kenobi. So
Yep.
yeah, there are two Jedi's. Like the Force is balanced. Execute Order 66. It's just interesting how it all happens, right? It's just really cool. At the end of the day, these prophecies tend to come true, but not the way everyone always thinks that they're going to become true. So yeah, there's other things I want to touch on in this. Like he has a spice hallucination, like I said early on, where not only does he have that whole part about I know your footsteps, old man, but there's one where he has it near his mom, and he says, "You turned me into a freak." He's really angry at her.
Yeah.
Because he said, "I saw people worshiping my name, and there was a holy war in my name, people dying for me and stuff like that." And it sounds like this is a burden that he doesn't want to take on. Like this is not what I wanted, and you've burdened me with this life that I did not choose for myself. Like it's really what's the word for selfish? It's very selfish to burden a child with that. It's the same thing that happened to in Attack on Titan, Zeke. Zeke was burdened with the restorationist syndrome that his dad had, like when he like imposed that lifestyle on his son, and it made his son hate him and turn against him. Paul is feeling resentment towards the fact that his mom, like, why the fuck did you do this to me? Why did you make me into this, as he calls it, you made me into a freak? Like he's pissed. And
in his visions of the future, like he sees legions of Fremen holding the Atreides banner. Like it's fucking, and it's like they're going to war in his name. There's like him and Chani, like in a fucking like in an airplane, and they look like they're ready to go to war. Then there's that crazy scene where you see the Fremen come out of the sand and start killing a bunch of people, and there's one Fremen putting in work. And then he opens up his visor and it's fucking Paul. It's like,
he's
Jesus
so
Christ.
broken. The way he was killing people was wild. He has like two blades, two Chris knives, I guess.
Yeah.
And Chris knives are made from the worm's teeth. So like they're a sacred thing because for one, we didn't talk about this a lot, but these are the things that now that we've kind of gone over what happens in a movie. So we're kind of done with that, right? Like he kills Jamis and now he's joined the Fremen. That's the end of the movie. He meets Chani. Yeah. Chani welcomes him out after this whole thing happens. She says, "This is only the beginning," and it goes off. I kind of want to jump around a little bit before we completely close out the episode, but there is the whole lore about Dune that I really like. So the sandworms are considered like virtually gods on this planet. They are, in a way, they always talk about like the great worm and stuff like that.
Yeah, they keep referring to it as like the Chris knife, for example. They say like it is the tooth of Shai Halud or something like that. Yes, that's
it. Shai Halud.
Refer to the worms.
Yep. So Chris knives are made from that. So they're like this sacred weapon. And so seeing one is like a big deal because to even get that is, you can imagine, very difficult. They also say that no matter what, sandworms always come. There's a line that the doctor says early on about that, which I thought was really interesting because like if you're in the desert and you don't know how to do the sand walk, like you have to walk a specific way to imitate the natural sound of the desert. And if you walk normal, they say anything that has a rhythm to it. So how we naturally walk has a rhythm to it, right? Left, right, left, right, left, right, in a very specific way. It always alerts sandworms to come to you, no matter what. They always come. And the fact that they always come 100%, obviously that's going to be used later on because it was even used a little bit in this movie where when she was being killed, she started banging her hand on the ground while she was surrounded. And a fucking sandworm came and just swallowed them whole. Like everybody who was about to kill her. And then she also gave up her own life anyway because she's going to die regardless. So she was like, fuck it, I might as well take you guys with me. And so she bangs her hand. I thought that scene was really cool because it's kind of like a summon that everyone can do. It's like, it's not exactly the most ideal summon, but everyone could call a sandworm. They even have a device that they could put into the ground that literally just does a loud ass thump. It just keeps thumping and it does it in a very rhythmic way. So that it also alerts sandworms to come to it. And when they come, they just eat everything in a very inescapable large vicinity. Like,
dude, they are giant. When they show like his when the mouth opens up and like the carrier gets eaten by like it is so much fucking bigger than the carrier.
Yeah.
Like,
at first I was thinking, how the fuck is this thing going to swallow something that's all metal like that and not die itself? But when you realize how small that actual carrier is compared to the size of the worm, it probably just gets digested by its stomach acid real quick and doesn't even,
Yeah.
it probably doesn't even make it. No, never mind. It's just like, whatever. Like, this is not, like,
Yep.
that was nothing.
Yeah, it gets
Like, we can swallow
completely,
pennies and nothing will happen to us. It's like, okay,
yeah,
like, I could swallow a
it
penny, like,
gets
I'll be fine.
fucking devoured. Also jumping around, just kind of a funny thing. When at the end, when like when Paul kills Jamis and he gets up, when they show Chani get up and it's like kind of in slow motion and she's like looking at him, I just like looked at it and I was like, you're Spider-Man. Like, I don't know. I don't know why. Well, I mean I know why, because it's Zendaya in fucking Spider-Man, but
Yeah.
it was so stupid. Because
She's been playing so many different roles. She plays a crackhead, Mary Jane, and also now basically, I guess, the love interest of the main character in Dune.
yeah, what's interesting is that in most of the visions, although in some of the visions, Chani is the one that kills Paul,
Yes.
and I feel like in most of the visions they are like a love interest. They're together, but as we know, the visions don't always come to pass the way
Yeah.
he sees them. So like maybe they're not a
Well,
love
he also
interest.
says something interesting. He says, and this is another thing I wanted to talk about. He says that the emperor doesn't have any sons, and I want to actually marry one of his daughters so that
Yeah.
I could actually take the throne. And with me being emperor, I can then wave my hand and make Arrakis a paradise.
Yep.
So he has this ambition, these goals to turn Arrakis into not just a place that people come to use it and abuse it for a spice, but to actually make it what the Fremen really want for it, which is it to be like, a paradise. And he says he could do that by being emperor. And they're like, what the fuck? Like, you vie for the throne? Like, you think that that's
Yeah,
actually going to
yeah.
work?
He says that to Dr. Leah Kynes, and then
Yeah.
she says like, she's like, "What don't you understand? Like, that's not gonna happen. Like, you guys were fucking set up.
Yeah, like you're
Like
talking
he's not
about.
gonna let you marry his daughter."
Yeah, like what makes you think the emperor who just tried to have you and your dad killed that he would ever let you marry his daughter? But Paul, again, these visions that he has and this ability to kind of change the future, right? Because he knows it, he can just do certain things to make it happen differently. It's pretty cool that he has this ambition. So we'll see how that plays out in the future. Because again, this is going to be a trilogy. But I do like certain things like that. I like the whole thing with the sandworms and how there's like this golden timeline that the Bene Gesserit are trying to essentially get to. And Paul's the prince that was promised, or at least it seems that way right now. A lot of times, so the same thing is true with like Star Wars and I guess Game of Thrones to some degree. Like you always have these prince that was promised Azor Ahai. At one point, Stannis Baratheon was thought to be Azor Ahai by Melisandre in Game of Thrones. And the person that you think is supposed to be the one is never usually that. And because Dune is the original of all of this, like Dune is one of the first, outside of the
Yeah.
Bible, Dune is one of the first like modern takes on the one. And I'm wondering if the way how every other story I just named, where the one is never actually who you think it is, I wonder if it's going to be the same exact thing for Dune, where it's actually not him and it's someone else, which will be
Yeah,
interesting.
It's tough to
Because
say.
his mom is pregnant with a child.
Yeah, it is tough
He's
to
gonna have a
say.
child.
Yeah, it is interesting, right? Because he could just be like, in a way, like how Lord of the Rings, and Lord of the Rings being super old and one of the originals, like Frodo, like Frodo is he's not the one in that he's like super broken, but he's the one in that like he was the only one that could carry the ring, and it's like, well, that's just kind of what it was.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. So far, like this first movie, I'm happy to. I wasn't sure if it was going to be. It's called Dune Part One, so I knew there's going to be a Part Two, but I
Right.
wasn't sure if there was going to be a Part Three or whatever. It is good to hear that there's going to be three parts.
Yes.
I think this first movie was really good. I'm very interested to see the second one. Honestly, my only real complaint, and it's just it's just I wish it was longer.
That's a good complaint to have.
Yeah,
It is so rare that people would say a 2.5 hour movie. The movie is 2 hours and 36 minutes. It is so rare that people these days, especially, say that they wish that a movie was longer.
Yeah,
Like,
but that's the thing. Because I was saying, I think the movie's paced well in that it's easy to watch. Like when I watched it, I didn't have a hard time watching it. I think the events moved along very well. So,
yes,
um,
agreed.
it being 2.5 hours, I don't feel as though it dragged, etc. Now, maybe if it was 4 hours, maybe there are parts that would drag. But I think that the movie is so like there's so much room for even more stuff to be in the movie that can be elaborated on. That it's just like, man, I wish it was even
Yeah,
even
because where
longer.
it ends seems like it just began, which is funny that Chani says that at the end. Like, is this is just the beginning? You really do feel that way, though.
Yeah, when I got to the end of the movie, I even like kind of said to myself, like,
No, that's it.
like this is the start of season 2. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
this is like you get to the end, but it's like,
The
you
first
know,
the first one is so basically built on world building and just establishing the politics, which I think is extremely important. Like, lay the groundwork. That's always important. It just sucks that
yeah,
it does take a really long time to do, but I appreciate it in a sense that it does do a very good job of world building and universe building. And it doesn't. I kind of like that. It leaves a lot for the viewer to just discern on their own. It doesn't have to,
yeah.
like, sometimes movies just go out of their way to say things so explicitly that it kind of takes you out of it. It's like, okay, I got it. I got it.
Yeah,
Like, this movie has a lot of implications. Like, it implies a lot, and you can kind of just pick up on it.
I appreciate that a lot. Like, for example, if I want the movie to be longer, but I don't want it to be longer because they just exposit more. That's not what I just want.
Yeah.
Like more. Like, for example, I would love for there to be some more scenes with Doctor Yue. I would
Yeah.
love for his betrayal to like hurt
Maybe,
me as the viewer.
yes, because you feel like him and Paul maybe were close, right? Like,
Yeah,
Paul looks
yeah,
like him and Paul have a cute little relationship where he comes to him and talks to him about teenage stuff and things like that. And then he betrays him, and it means it's a really big deal. He talks about his wife and how to hark. Maybe he says to Paul, the Harkonnens have my wife and stuff like, just like lay some groundwork, and then maybe
yeah.
like you said, the concubine thing with Jess and the father Leto. Like, you want to see those two and how they actually love each other, and he's not just using her to be someone to give him a child, as they kind of put it. So stuff like that would actually do the movie justice. But yeah, I maybe there's a director's cut of this. Maybe
I would love that if there was a
if they
fucking
release
4-hour director's cut.
if they release a 4-hour director's cut of Dune, I'm 100% watching it, because, like you said, it's
Oh, for
very
sure.
easy to watch, and I feel like this movie seems like one of the ones that would have had a lot of cut out stuff already. Like, this seems like the type of movie that would have a lot. Like, they had to cut. It's 2 hours and 36 minutes. You have to imagine it was hard to get down to that.
Yeah, there's. I do want to see like does HBO have like deleted scenes and stuff? I might check.
You can.
Like, I know.
I'm not sure, but it is on HBO still. That's how I watched it again.
I remember I used to love that in DVDs, right? Checking out deleted scenes.
Me too.
And stuff.
I actually used to love deleted scenes, especially in comedies. But yes, deleted scenes are fire. This seems like the exact type of thing that, like, a year from now, maybe, or maybe even this year, because it came out last year. Maybe even this year we'll get a director's cut of Dune. I just feel like, because of how big this franchise is, because this is a pretty big franchise, might I add. Like, this is outside of Fantastic Beasts. I don't think there's anything fantasy as big as this running right now, like, that has an ongoing story.
Well, even the book, I can look it up, or you can look it up. I think the book is one of the best-selling, like, science fiction books, or one of the best-selling books of, like, all time.
Okay,
Like,
I'm not surprised.
the book, I feel like I know it sold millions, like millions and millions of copies. Like, I'm pretty sure it is absurdly successful. There's actually even, now obviously this is in response to the movie, but I don't know if it's out yet. It might be already out or coming out soon. There's a Dune video game. It's a real-time strategy game, like
fuck?
StarCraft. There's a Dune game, it's called Dune: The Spice Wars, that's either out already or coming out very soon.
Yo, you reminded me of the era where every movie got a video game, even some that should not. Like, there was
Yeah,
always like
yeah.
a shitty PlayStation game or a shitty Xbox game of every
Yeah.
single movie that ever came out. I remember
All
those
those shitty
days.
Harry Potter games
Oh
and
my
stuff.
god, dog, they're so bad. There'd be like a movie of Independence Day. Like, Independence Day has a
Yep.
game. There'd be a
Yep.
fucking game of that. Like, there's so many bad ones.
And, like, Will Smith would be a character in the game. It would look like Will Smith, but it would be voiced by, like,
Some random ass guy.
just some random
Some
guy.
absolute random. Same thing with yeah, pretty much every movie you could think of has a really bad PlayStation game or Xbox game back in the day. And it's just funny when I thought about that. When you said that Dude has a video game, I just imagine you playing as, like, you're playing as Paul, but he just
Yeah.
it's just so corny. Like, the graphics are bad. Even I remember those games would always be so much worse looking than the actual system could put out.
Yeah. They were so bad.
Like, the
So
system would look one way, but the games would just be like, yo, how the fuck?
how'd you get here? The cool thing about this game, though, is that it's a RTS real-time strategy, which I think actually fits the idea of Dune a lot. Like,
Yeah.
instead of you just playing through the story of the movie, it's just like you choose like a race, like you choose like the Harkonnens or whatever, and you like build up a little. It's like a StarCraft or
Okay.
Age of Empires.
Yeah, I mean, I don't doubt that these days, like games based on movies have gotten a lot better. It's just I just had to. Oh shit. Well, maybe not. I don't play video games the way I used to anymore. I pretty much play the exact ones that I want to play, and that is it. So like
Yeah, yeah.
for me, I don't
I'm not
even.
giving them any extra credit. I think this game could be good. I haven't played it myself yet, obviously,
Yeah,
but
that's
the
fair.
idea of it being RTS, I think, makes sense for what I've seen from Dune. But you know, there's still shitty video game movies and
Oh,
shitty
absolutely.
movies based on video games.
All right, so before we get out of here, I want to give a shout out to our patrons over at Patreon. As always, you guys support the podcast, which we really appreciate. And it's the start of a new month, May. Also, our extra episode for the month of April will be going up. So Kenny's going to do that, I can think tonight, right?
Yeah, yeah. I've been kind of away and super busy the last couple days, but I'm there all day. I've been uploading stuff to the YouTube.
Yep. So the extra
Not
episode will be
publicly.
out for
It's
April.
only for the Patreon, but
Yes,
yeah.
yes. So the extra episode for April that is Patreon exclusive will be coming out. But anyways, we have what 35 patrons over here, and if you're listening to this and you're still not in the Discord server, all of our patrons have access to the Discord server. So message me and let me know, and I'll send you an invite. But we have Connie, Austin, Leon, Quest, Garen, Xavier, Hylian, TCG Automotive, Silver Chronic, Tyree Tinsley, Dimitri Barnes, Alexander Brissett, Vinny Casello, Giovanni Avelos, Game Freak Yoshi, Alex Flamer, Gabe Marini, Henri Reynolds, CJ, Dubk Dan One, Saul at Dabbers Gaming Cafe, Dan Variable, Dennis Milburn, Joseph Marcello, Scott Page, Red Vines, First to Home, Dayless Fernandez, Tom Watabiki, S. Akuma, Mitchell Nels, Midwest Gaming, William Shapiro, Dimitri Safirdis, and last but not least, our newest patron, Chips. Thank you guys for joining. We really appreciate it. And yeah, we expect to give a lot more content. I guess I can give like a little roadmap of what we plan to do in the month of May. So one of the things I really want to do is I want to get an episode out on the Final Fantasy VII Remake, because that was my favorite game through the pandemic. I think God of War is like a close second, but for me, because of the nostalgia of Final Fantasy VII, playing Final Fantasy VII Remake in 2020, that game is phenomenal to me. So we're going to have a couple guests on for that. We're going to have our first episode, or we're planning to have our first episode that has 4 people in it. Bring in 2 guests for that one, and just talk about Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy VII in general, and probably just, I mean, you probably can't talk about those without talking about all of Final Fantasy, right? So we'll do that. Also, in the month of May, we're going to do another food episode. So our food talk series that we had with Dominique Roberts, so we're going to do another one. I'm thinking maybe we could do fast food chains and just kind of like tier list them out, talk about them, because we're getting a Raising Cane's in Philly, which is a lot of duelists love this restaurant. This fast food restaurant is like a chicken spot. I love it too. But people talk about it like it is the best thing in the world. So I haven't had it in years, and we're getting one on May 12th in University City in Philadelphia. So I will be going there to try out one of those chicken tender meals, because that shit is kind of crack. So we'll be talking about like, you know, all different fast foods and ranking them and that type of thing. We're going to have more Yu-Gi-Oh stuff, of course, always. There's also an RBET 3 happening in the month of May. So we'll be doing that as well. Yeah. And the people who are in our Discord.
And episode 69 will be on porn.
Yeah, we'll have episode 69, which is actually the next episode. And we will be talking about, like, yeah, so this is 68. So 69 will be next. And the whole episode, we'll be talking about, like, hentai and, like, you know, porn stuff like that. Maybe go over Pornhub's top searches.
I was joking.
I was not. I am not. So the next episode, I thought about this. I was thinking that, you know, some episodes we have that don't necessarily have one specific topic. They're just kind of us just free talking, kind of what Kenny and I would do normally. And there's the reason why this podcast even exists. So I was thinking the next episode, like, that could actually be part of the discussion, not the entire discussion, but part of it will actually be on. And I have funny stories. I have funny stories about this whole thing. So it's not just going to be like some creep weird shit. I promise you guys will enjoy it. It will be very entertaining to hear. You guys like my story about when I fucking ate a condom on Halloween. So, and if you haven't heard that story, then check out my, the food talk episode where I go over my story of how I ended up chewing on a condom. So, as I always say, yes. So, as I always say, do the things that make you happy, and we are out of here.
Even if that thing is chewing on a condom.
Peace out.